Kia ora everybody, family and friends, it's Bridget here. I just wanted to come on here today and do some hot tips on how you can be recycling the food waste that comes out of your kitchen. Three super easy ways to recycle your food waste, and this is what we do and we've been doing for quite a while. All three of these things we've been implementing for probably like at least the last 6 or 7 years, and it's just great to not be throwing your vegetable scraps or your food scraps into the rubbish bin. It's just going to add to the landfill, and what we're really wanting to try and do is create a little bit of a closed system in our houses, on our properties, where everything that comes onto our properties we try and keep on our properties, which includes our kitchen waste. And we also want to be part of the fertility cycle, so making sure that even though all your vegetable scraps, your carrot peelings or whatever, you're not going to eat them, they still do provide nutrients, and you can be putting those back into your garden for a pumping garden. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is this Bokashi bucket behind me. I've been using a Bokashi bucket for about 10 years now. I started using the Bokashi bucket because I knew that I didn't want to be digging my vegetable scraps down the backyard, which by the way was how I first started out at my flat in Wellington. That's what we were doing because we didn't want to throw our scraps in the rubbish, and we didn't really know what else to do, so we used to bury them down the back, and it was pretty smelly and pretty gross, but what else do you do when you don't know how to do it, right? So I'm hoping that today you might move on from that method if that's what you're doing. So Bokashi bucket, our council actually had a really cool kind of incentive when we first got this bucket, and we got it for a really good price, and it's really old. Like I said, it's like 10 years old now, and it's still going pretty strong. Essentially a Bokashi bucket is 2 buckets. The top one has got holes in the bottom of it, so that all the juices come out, and the bottom one is just like a regular bucket. And basically what you do is you put all of your food waste from your kitchen in there. You can even it's really windy, we just had a bit of carnage over there. You can even put like cooked food in there and meat scraps. And the thing about the Bokashi bucket, it's really good for people that might be living in like apartment buildings or areas where you can't have a compost heap. This can be your kind of compost heap. It's not going to be as good as compost, and it definitely doesn't make compost. Don't kind of get me wrong there, but for us, I got it because I wanted to start composting my food scraps, and that was a good place to start. So I'll just turn the camera around and show you the Bokashi bucket. Okay, here we go. So here it is here. You can easily make your own one if you're nifty and swifty. And the lid has now lost its seal, so flies do get in. You can see there, it's just got a whole lot of feed jars that I've used, and the idea is that every time you put new food waste in there, you just squash it down, and then I've got this stuff here which is called the Bokashi Zing, and it's basically got a whole lot of effective microorganisms in here that help break down the food. So every time I put my food scraps in here, I want to put a little bit of that in it, and that's it. Here's our Bokashi bucket here. It's just a regular bucket that we have in the kitchen, and these are just all kind of food scraps, some recyclable paper that we use in there, and all I'm going to do is just shove it in, push it down. It's really important to try and push it down so you get as much air out. You can see there's like turmeric and ginger and avocados and some all sorts of moldy bits and pieces, so that just goes in there. Some people get fancy and use like a a potato masher or whatever to push them down, but you want to push all that down. I can't do it with one hand, and then put a little bit more on that. Alright, so that is the Bokashi bucket. When it gets full, you've got a few different options. You can either bury it in your garden. If you're into kind of double digging, you can put it in the trenches, or you can just find somewhere in your garden that you might want to put a garden, like plant something, and dig it in there. Likewise, you can put it underneath fruit trees. I wouldn't put any roots directly on it. It still is a reasonably raw product, but that's one way you can do it. What we do is we wait till it's full, and then we add it into layers on our compost heap. So that's how we use it. And if you are like in an apartment building, or you don't have a garden or anything like that, I'm sure that you will find some grateful friends that could use this in their own garden, or maybe a garden or something like that. So that's the Bokashi bucket. Probably the only downside of it is that there's a little bit of a cost to get the bucket and to get the zing. You can actually make the zing, and you can actually make your own bucket, so that's all pretty cool. So the next bucket that we usually have in our kitchen is not cookies. It's for the worm farm, and that is our worm farm right there. So this is called a can of worms. Worm farming is so easy. I just to worm farm, it's so easy. The good thing about worm farming is that the product that comes out of this is really good for your garden. You get like what they call a worm wee, which is like a liquid that comes out, which you can see in here. Some people call it kind of black gold. You can water that down and feed all your plants. So this is actually a really cool thing to have if you are only growing stuff in pots. And I have been growing stuff in pots for a very long time, and the worm farm was great because I would also harvest the vermicast, which is the result of all your vegetable scraps broken down. You end up with this really rich kind of soil amendment. And I could add that to like my pots, and I could also water my pot plants with the vermicast juice. So that was really cool. So I'll give you a little bit of a look of the worms. Oh, what have I done? Oh my gosh. Alright, here we go. So just try and keep it covered with a little bit of cardboard to keep all the things off. And if you're really quiet, you might even see some worms in there. So I'm just going to use this. So that's the worm farm. The downside of the worm farm is that there's a few things that they don't really like to eat. They don't really like citrus, they don't really like onions, and they definitely don't like meat or cooked food or anything like that. So really it's just like your raw vegetable scraps. And with this system here, this is the top layer, and then there's a middle layer. Don't know if you can see that in there. And that's where all the beautiful lovely vermicast is, and I can show you that on another day when I have someone videoing this for me. The third and final way that you can recycle your food scraps, which is quite possibly the most fun, is get some chickens. Chickens are so great. We've had a couple of chickens for quite a few years now, and they are really the best way to recycle like cooked food scraps. If you are a meat eater or into eating cheese and stuff like that, they love all that kind of stuff. Chickens love the protein. They're also really amazing in your garden. They scratch around. You can create chook tractors and make little mini houses to have them on your garden beds. They can prepare garden beds for you. We've started heaps of gardens at different places using our chickens, just putting their chicken house on top of the area that we wanted to use first, and then they dug up all the soil for us. They are just so cool. And our chickens are probably hiding from me right now. They are way down the back here, in this area here. And so every day we have a little bit of a routine with the children, and we go down there and feed them in the morning. It's actually a really great way to get outside early in the morning. And the other thing I wanted to say just quickly in terms of recycling your food scraps from your kitchen is you can also recycle the eggshells. So whenever we've had eggs, if you're an egg eater, we leave the shells on the side of the kitchen sink and just give them a little bit of rinse out, and then we put them in this container here just to dry, and then we crush them all up, and you can just crush them all up. And again, that's a really good nutrient recycling. You can put those back on your soil, you can put them in your compost, you can even put them in the worm farm nice and ground up. And if they're really ground up so they don't represent eggs, you can also put them in your chook food. So I hope that has been a little bit of inspiration for you on the different ways that you can be recycling your food scraps out of your kitchen and helping to improve your soil health with that. If you've got any questions, then post them below, and I would love to know if you have any different ideas about what to do with your food scraps. Are you just digging them into the soil like we used to, or have you got like some really cool systems set up that other people might benefit from hearing about? Till next time everybody, ka kite anō, take care.